Hi everyone, welcome to another video. Today we're going to be applying what we learnt in the previous video, the theory from there about bivariate data, scatter plots and correlation, and we're going to use that to do a question here. So what we're going to be doing is practicing and revising pretty much what we've learnt from linear relationships and plotting points on a graph. And once we've done this, for this first part, we're going to describe the correlation and identify any outliers as well. So we have this simple bivariate data set here. We have a couple of values of x, this is one of my variables, and y is my second variable. So what we're doing, we're basically plotting the points on a number line. So here, let's just do it, because with a lot of this stuff, it's easier to go from smallest to highest. So we're going to start with x, and we're going to plot all of these points along here. So this is the lowest x coordinate we have. We have 2 here, and the y coordinate there is going to be 6.2. So my x is going to be about here, because this is going to be about 2.5 between 0 and 5. So we're going to go down about here and draw up, and where we have 6.2, which is roughly here, that's where our first point is going to go. This is just a recap of what we know about plotting points on a number line. Well, let's do the same thing for another one. So when x equals to 3, y equals to 5.5, so 3 is about here, and we will just go up until we hit about 5.5, which is like roughly here, and that's our next data point. And we're basically just going to keep doing this for all of the points. Now, I'll do this a little bit quicker. You can pause the video and have a go in your own time if you'd like. My next value is 6 for x, where the y is about 0.9. So that's like down here. Yep, that looks about right. My next one is going to be 8, and the y is going to be about 3.5, which is about here. Next x value is 9, so the y is going to be 4 there, so that's about here. Moving along, our next one is 13. The y is going to be 2.1. So that's going to be like down about here. And we have 15. The y is 1.6. It's about there. And finally 17, where we have 1.3 as the y value. So 17, and we have about 1.3. So that's about there. Okay, so now that we've plotted all of these points on our plane, we can now start to talk about describing the data. So we've done part A. Now in part B, we want to describe the correlation between x and y as positive or negative. So from the last video, if we remember, positive or negative refers to the gradient of our points. So if we were to draw a line showing the trend, would this be a line with a positive gradient or a negative gradient? Now here we can pretty clearly see through all of these points, if we were to draw a line, I can see a quite, first of all, linear trend, everything's packed in, but if this was a line, it would have a negative gradient. So we can then say that our correlation between x and y is negative here. Now in the next part, it says describe the correlation between x and y as strong or weak. Now with these particular points that we have, we can see that they're quite heavily packed in. They appear very linear here. They're not super scattered. They're not linear but spread out quite a bit. We can see that these almost lie straight on, as I showed before, a line that passes through them. So the more linear it is, the stronger we can say the correlation is. So here, this is going to be a strong correlation. So we have a negative correlation. So as x gets bigger, y gets smaller. It's got a negative gradient. And we have a very linear type of trend between these. So that when we draw a line through, we can see it's going to be very, very linear. So we can say this is strong. And finally, we want to identify any outliers. So if we've done the other bits correctly and looked at our trend, we can very clearly see who the outlier is going to be. Now that one is going to be this guy over here. So this point, because it's away from everything else, it's very different to the trend that we see. This is my outlier. So we can say that there is an outlier at the point 6, 0.9. Now some of you probably may have picked up on that when I was drawing it in. Like I did these 2 points, they were pretty close together. Then whoa, all of a sudden we have 6, 0.9. Now this may not have been an outlier if there was no correlation between, if all these points were scattered around somewhere else, this may not be an outlier. But since we can see a very clear trend with these other data points, they look very linear, our outlier sits far away from those. So this particular point, my outlier, defies the trend. So my outlier defies the trend. So it sits somewhere else. All of the others are trending somewhere, roughly in the same spot, roughly moving the same way. The outlier does not belong to these. It sits alone outside of the trend. But this is how we can apply what we've learned from the previous video to actually taking some data sets as we have here, these examples of bivariate data, plotting them in onto a graph with a horizontal axis and a vertical axis, and then commenting on the correlation, whether it's positive or negative, strong or weak, and then identifying any outliers in the data. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.